Welcome to the first of two lectures for this week. This one is on program evaluation and the next one will be on maintaining a quality program. So we're kind of getting to the end of class. After this week, I'm really just going to lecture about child abuse, a little bit on licensing and organization, and then we'll move right into the review and final. So we're kind of starting to wind down at the end of a very busy semester, I'm sure, for students. Many of you are taking multiple classes. And then this class is very writing heavy, and we've kind of just done a quick tear through all of the ways that you can begin to think like a director or a manager and maybe less like a teacher. So in this lecture today, I'm going to talk about the environmental rating scale, which a lot of you should be very familiar with. And then also how we use surveys, questionnaires, and self-assessments as well in order to really kind of evaluate our program. So why do we evaluate or assess our programs? A lot of times it's to prepare for accreditation. That's part of the NIAC or NECPA accreditation or Montessori accreditation program. Process is doing a process of self-assessment and self-evaluation of your program in preparation for them coming out and doing the same thing to you. A lot of times it's a requirement for a funding agency as well. If you're state or federally funded, you typically have to do some kind of monitoring of your program as well. QPI, the Quality Preschool Initiative here in San Diego, does ECHRS and other types of assessments and evaluations as well. Even if you do not need to do that, I think it's a best practice to check in with staff, to evaluate your program, make plans for improvement for a new year, not just to your physical environment, but to your actual teaching practice and the ways in which you manage and supervise your staff as well. And then if you have concerns about quality, if things are starting to slip and you don't know why, a lot of times taking a step back and not, just being like, oh, the teachers aren't listening, or, oh, the parents are awful. Taking a couple steps back and doing maybe a more objective assessment or evaluation of your program can kind of show that maybe it is a multitude of reasons that maybe a specific part of your program isn't working. Then we're also going to talk a little bit about how do you use these results. A lot of times we're reporting them to somebody else, but how are we going to help with customer service? How is it going to help us plan for budgeting what we need to actually buy? And then our staffing needs. Do we need less staff, more staff, better quality staff, better trained staff? So there is the environmental rating scale. Which one do I have? I have a lot. I think this is my home office. So I actually think it's at another location. I think I brought it into lecture about, so it's somewhere probably in my car. But I have all the ECHRS myself personally. I have the school age, I have the infant toddler, and I have the preschool, and I have the management one as well that I've bought for myself. I think they're very important. But if you're not familiar with an environmental rating scale, I think you should be. It is a quality way in order to assess your program. They have changed it recently. I started off in the original one from the 80s, and then they have done a new one, which is a lot more culturally responsive. And I've heard that they're working on another one as well. So I would definitely take a look at it. There's the subscales over here are very interesting: space and furnishing, personal care routines, language, reasoning, activities, interactions, program structure, parents, and staff. Why? And I'm not going to go deep into ECHRS. First of all community colleges have a class on evaluation and maintaining of programs, specifically centered on like teaching. So we have that at the community college level. So if you want to know more about doing the ECHRS, how to train staff on the ECHRS, please consider taking the class. The ECHRS is a great tool. That's less of my focus, is how you actually do an ECHRS, and more on the use of the ECHRS as a tool, a way that we can self-evaluate. If you can't get to community college, I understand that is a time commitment. It's a money commitment as well. If your staff will pay for it. The fantastic thing is that on YouTube, like everything, we have ECHRS. So you can literally enter ECHRS item 10 and it will tell you about bleach and water. You can do scoring the ECHRS and it will tell you about scoring the ECHRS. This is a great tool for training staff on how to do it as well, specifically the scoring. If you've ever done an environmental rating scale, sometimes the scoring can seem a little bit weird. or it just kind of takes a couple of minutes of like training somebody on how to do it and then doing it with them, and then they typically will start to understand it. So that's great. If you don't have the community college as a way to understand ECHRS, then I would also consider looking on YouTube or buying the kind of self-assessment book that comes along with the rating tool as well. So as we're kind of working, and when I'm going to talk specifically about just kind of assessments in general, you could do ECHRS, there's a Montessori assessment, you know, depending on kind of what you do, there are assessments that you buy. You could even make a tool yourself, but I just really think that it needs to be something objective that looks at your classrooms, the strengths of your classrooms, the strengths of your management practice, and also your areas of needs or weaknesses and places where you need to kind of focus your attention. It does need to start from the kind of process of self-reflection as well. You have to kind of be in this ready state of mind, willing and able to kind of look at what you're doing in the classroom and be mindful and being able to make changes. So not everybody is always there all of the time. So if you are doing ECHRS in one fell swoop, not everybody is going to be responsive to these messages at this particular time, but you would hope that most of your staff is, so that you can start to make changes. Assessments also need to include our policies, procedures, and rules. Are they helping classrooms? Are they supporting families? Or are they hindering a classroom? Are they not coming from an actual need in the classroom, either from the children or the staff, and they're actually hindering how we do things as well? So hearing from your staff, having listening sessions with your staff to look at specific things like family style dining isn't working well. Obviously, we still want to do family style dining, but is the way and the times that we're doing it and the training for the staff and the policies and rules actually hindering how we do that? And we could put policies in place that would support staff in being able to do family style dining. So I do really think that staff should be involved in making changes. You are the boss, you are the supervisor, you are the manager, you have kind of a final say in this. But I think situations where it's very top heavy and one person makes all the decisions without any input can alienate staff. It doesn't lead to a great working environment. And a lot of times, you know, you're not in direct care anymore if you are a manager or above, you know, so you're not living and breathing in those classrooms. So you're not seeing kind of the day-to-day, is this working or is this not working? If we can maintain quality, but also change our procedures in order to support staff, that might be a great thing to do. They have a lot of insight on room planning, where furniture should go, the challenging behaviors that they're having with their children, families that we need to keep an eye on. So how do you let them facilitate some change? So they can't make broad sweeping decisions like, yeah, we never want to wash our hands again. You know, like that's kind of boring. Like I'd like to just, you know, do all of the infant diaper changes all at once without washing my hands situation. Like, no, you know, that's, come on, health and safety guys. But they can do some changes. So you are going to have to engage in a process of what can you allow your staff to make changes from? What do you want to hear from them about? And how can you make changes together in areas of your program that need staff involvement? So when we're using ECHRS as well, it needs to be done by staff to self-assess. So I use any kind of evaluation tool. I typically have my staff do it themselves. And then I usually, or somebody in management does it as well as an observer. I typically combine the scale. So I'm using the environmental rating scale as an example here, but you could use any self-assessment tool, but I typically do it with staff. Staff does it, I do it, and then we combine them together. We look at what I saw, what they say, what they say they saw, and then we make plans for the future. It's great when both the staff and the teachers can agree on area of vulnerabilities. So areas that came up on a self-assessment as an area of need, when you both agree, that's fantastic. That shows that both an independent observer and that person saw that, and you'll make an action plan. This is how we're going to change it. I'm going to buy you these materials. You're going to change your teaching practice this way. We've made a really specific, measurable, achievable action plan that's going to really target that area. Sometimes there's no agreement on the self-assessment. Either they don't understand it, like ECHRS can be a little difficult, so you might need to retrain. Sometimes staff rates themselves perfect on everything because they're very insecure about their teaching practice, or they're insecure about their employment. Like especially a new staff member might think that this, like, if I get all fours, I'm going to get fired. And so they'll rate themselves higher than what they should be. They might not even just see it. It's just become, it's so much part of their day-to-day life, so much part of their teaching practice that they don't even see that's an area to work on. Some people are very resistant to criticism, and so you're going to have to find a way that you can constructively help them without it being seen and perceived by that person as criticism. They might lie on the assessment once again, probably because they're insecure or they feel insecure in the classroom. Or sometimes they're covering something up, like they know that it's an issue, but they don't want to have to deal with it, or they know that it's going to be a serious, maybe reprimand issue. So there are reasons why there could be a mismatch between what I see and what the staff is self-reporting. When this happens, you're going to have to look at it a couple of different ways. First of all, how is the team working? Typically, we have classroom teams, so sometimes there's a mismatch between what each team member says, which shows me that they're not working well. We need to work on some team building, maybe get them out of the classroom to support each other. The easiest thing for me to do with that kind of team building in that type of situation was to get them out to lunch together. Typically have a floater or some subs go in at lunchtime and give them a longer lunch break so that they could go to Alberto's or something and share a burrito and just kind of get out for a little bit. A lot of times in our teams as well, we usually have a big personality. The leader, the full-time teacher, sometimes the lead teacher, the mentor teacher, or just somebody who has a big personality. And so they might direct and also change the way that the self-assessments happen, sometimes without even understanding. And some of them, once again, it's just a lack of training or understanding why we use this tool, that it's not to get you into trouble, it's to look at our program and make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to for the children in our care. So in these types of situations, I think it's important, if you have this huge mismatch again, is to retrain the staff on how to use the self-assessment tool or the ECKERS or whatever it is, and then reinforce to them, if you get a 3 and 4, you know, it might affect your stipend that you might get with Quality Preschool Initiative, but for the most part, it doesn't affect the employment that you're actually going to have. So reinforce that their position, for the most part, is still solid. And I want you to self-assess yourself. I want you to self-reflect. I want you to look at your teaching practice. Then I might want to highlight the most important things. So if this is a classroom and a group that's really struggling in multiple parts of assessment, or a scale, so in what the classrooms look like and what they're actually doing and how they're talking to parents, pick the most important top 2, so probably the care and supervision of the children and how they're talking to the parents, and really focus and double down on those 2 issues. Everything else can start to come apart. You can work on independently. You can buy nicer things for the classroom. You can send other people in to clean it. You can give them more time to clean it. But the actual really hard things, you're going to really, really focus on and really support them in kind of making those changes. So what does an action plan or plan of action look like? And I'm going to use those words interchangeably, either plan of action or action plan. And I have one on Canvas if you want to take a look at one. But what it is you take feedback from the profile, from the scale, whatever self-assessment tool you use, and you make measurable and achievable change. The SMART goals, so it's an acronym, SMART, SMART, measurable, achievable, routine bound, spacing, and then time bound as well. So typically what you do is you get a group and you discuss, and your teams come up with action items, and then typically I give it a week to kind of soak in, to marinate, and then we discuss it again and we set up a couple of goals based on that. So if they're saying classroom planning is a real issue for them, in a week we're going to come back and we're going to set up no more than 4 goals around this kind of topic. Sometimes you need to meet individually as well, especially if somebody's very resistant to criticism. A lot of times a group setting can exacerbate that. So they feel like they're being picked on, or they don't like other people hearing about their vulnerabilities. So sometimes you need to meet with a teacher first and then the team, or you need to meet with each part of the team individually. They're still getting the same information, but that sometimes helps people who are resistant to change or resistant to what they perceive as criticism in actually being able to hear your message. In that case, you do need to make sure that the message all teachers get is the same. Maybe the way that you say it is differently, but you can't say, oh, you focus on this and you focus on that. If there's no communication between them as a team, that's not going to go well. Typically, this is where you get a mentor or a lead teacher involved as well, so that they can implement, they can report back, they can support you in the classroom, especially if you have a team that's not working well or there's one really large personality who's dominating the conversation about the reflection. So that's a great way to do it. And a lot of times, if you're lucky enough to have a larger management team, you might also want to break up the duties and responsibilities around this classroom. So if you're really struggling with a specific team, then you might want to have some more management support as you're supporting the team in changing and growing and getting together and making these changes. That's a lot on you as a supervisor. Have somebody assist you with it as well as possible. So your action plan is definitely going to tell you some budget issues too. So doing this at least once a year is going to let you know, do you have large, smaller dollar investments? So you don't have a lot of diverse books. That's going to pop up on the environmental rating scale. You need to do a one-day workshop on science and technology. You need to have better blocks in or you need to add better, more diverse closing to your pretend player. So those are what are called smaller dollar investments. Then you also have your capital improvements. Do you need more space on your playground? You're going to have to push the fence out and get a couple more square feet because you don't have enough for all of the children that are in your program. Maybe you do licensing wise, but when it comes to other rating scales, maybe you just don't have enough space. Do you need new furniture, which is very expensive, especially if you do the really good quality wooden stuff. Taking down walls, we had to do that in one area that I worked in. We needed to have better sight lines. That was a huge capital improvement that required grants and additional money. Replacing flooring, now we have cheaper options, but still replacing flooring and putting in like the nice vinyl flooring that looks like fake wood or tile or something like that is huge, but that is a part of quality. It's a part, you can't have unsafe flooring that children can trip over, and if that's what's coming up in your self-assessment and your evaluation of your program, then you're going to need to do that. Keep note of them. You can get quotes and estimates as well. So if you know that you need $100,000 for your gigantic center, how can you break it down if you only have $10,000 a year in capital improvements? So doing the most important first and then getting all the other things over years and years will still add up and will change your program for the better over the long term. I do a lot of surveys. I do like surveys, and I lecture a lot about this a lot at when I work at Cal State San Marcos, where I also lecture. So surveying everybody, I love a good survey. It gives you, if you set it up right, and you can buy them on Teachers Pay Teachers, you can Google for them, or you can set them up yourself, or they might come from a larger organization, but it gives us research, data, statistics, numbers, things that are a bit more objective about our teachers and our staff. What are they reporting about their program? What are families telling us about customer service and how well we feel supported? What is management's issues? And then a lot of times these surveys come from our board of governing agencies, but we do survey community members, especially when knowing what the needs are. So if we're setting up a program for the first time, maybe we're headed towards doing preschool, but there's tons of preschools. There's tons of part-day preschools in this neighborhood. Everybody needs infant toddler care and maybe school-age care. That's going to be a great survey that's actually going to have you meet a need in the community and not just provide something that everybody has, but can be really difficult. If you're doing what everybody else does, why would they come to you? And then I love a good exit survey, specifically an exit interview or an exit questionnaire for staff that is leaving. So if you have a lot of high staff turnover, and we have a high staff turnover in this industry, I'm not discounting that, but within your own center, if you're having a hard time retaining staff, knowing why is going to be huge. If it is pay, if you are part of a larger corporate organization, state, federal, or somebody above you, being able to kick that up to them and be like, look, I am losing 27% of my staff each year because they need $1 more an hour. Maybe that's something a corporate program or a large nonprofit or something like that can look at. Is it going to be cheaper over the long run to give them more money an hour in order to not have to interview, to not have to rehire, to retrain, all of this multiple times per year? Also, on the kind of bummer side, it's going to tell you if there's something bad, not bad, but if there's something that you need to work on in your own management style, that might also be part of it. Because typically exit interviews or surveys are done with HR, you're not present. And so if they're gonna badmouth you, they are. A good HR person is going to temper that and tell you in a nice and more constructive way what you need to do better in order to retain your staff. So if you are too top down or you don't spend enough time supporting your staff, that's the type of stuff that you need to hear in order to make a change, but it can be hard to do. So some different survey types that you could do. I like doing staff surveys. Once again, writing the questions well so that you get more objective, kind of researchy methods and methodology coming back to using your methods and methodology to get like more data and statistics, but generally knowing what's going well, what needs improvement. Parent surveys, typically they're anonymous with the box in the classroom or lobby. A parent doesn't want to feel like they are, you know, going to get in trouble if they had something negative to say. And I like to do it when they're leaving the program as well. Typically, if you have a parent survey, I do an incentive to participate as well. If they put the survey anonymously, in the box, I might offer a chance to win, but then it doesn't become anonymous. But like it's like a drawing, and a person who puts it in can get a $50 gift card. Once again, it's not anonymous in that case, but sometimes you'll get more parent participation. Some survey questions, some are once again written for you. They're coming down from on high. They're coming from a body or an agency or a board. But if you can write it yourself, a scale of 1 to 5, asking specific questions, asking for areas of suggestions, and then, you know, instead of taking negatives, maybe frame it as a positive. What can we do to improve? So instead of what sucks about my program, what's good about my program, and what do I need to improve? But this scale is very good, and this will give you some objective information as well. And then once again, exit surveys, why did you leave, where did you go? And once again, this is typically handled by HR, but if not, you could do it by email or by phone. But it's just a great way to know, either from your parents or from your staff members, where are you going, why didn't you like it here, and what can I change about my program and about myself in order to keep the quality and to keep the parents and staff that I might want. And I do want to say that from a more corporate standpoint, my husband does not work in this industry, but he does work for a corporation. He left another corporation, and a lot of their questions were about money. So they were willing to offer him more money in order for him to stay. And he said that the HR person even shared with him, if they have a certain amount of people who say money was a contributing factor in their leaving, then they will go to the corporate office and tell them, and that can make differences in the amount of money that they offer staff. It's a totally different industry. I don't know if it is the same here, but it is something to consider. If you work in a large organization that has offices or corporate offices, communicating why staff is leaving in a very objective way, like 15 people left my program this year and all of them cited their low pay or their lack of benefits or something like that, that might motivate a larger organization to actually look at those types of things if they're seeing that turnover is an issue. Then we have actual staff performance evaluation. So what I was kind of talking about before was more a process of self-reflection, of self-assessment, using the Eckers, if possible, not tied in with your actual performance and the money that you make. I think when it becomes actual performance, it can be very difficult for people to be honest and truthful with themselves because their performance and possibly their raises and their livelihood is tied into it. So I know that performance evaluations are very, very important, but I typically always had another process of self-reflection that wasn't tied in with anything like that in order to kind of support people in being more open and willing to change. Typically, a staff performance evaluation is done once a year. It's possibly tied into a raise or more vacation hours or something if possible. There's typically a formal job evaluation, so the expectations that we have and the job responsibilities that you have, was that met or not? And then I also have included a staff evaluation format for you guys on Canvas as well. So you can use the Eckers, and a lot of programs do use Eckers for a stipend that you might receive or things like that. I didn't, but I know that a lot of people are constrained by other organizations and things like that. Okay, so you also should evaluate your support staff. So if you're lucky enough to have a janitor, a cooking staff, admin assistants, anything like that, once again, an evaluation based on the job description, based on their performance as well. And you should make plans for their development, especially for your kitchen staff that needs to be maintaining their quality and their permits that they have in their, or their certificates that they have in their own kitchens. So you need to keep an eye on that, and that should be part of their development process as well. Same with our janitors as well, you know, looking at is the quality of how they mix bleach continuing to be what they're actually supposed to be doing. So we need to look at that as well. Then evaluating yourself as a director. In our textbook on page 25, it does have some self-evaluation tools that you can use. And they are detailing a self-evaluation tool that's very similar to ECHRS or the environmental rating scale. So you might want to take a look at that if you don't use ECHRS or you want something different. I do like the program administration scale as well, and I have that one as well. But I think it's a great way to look at yourself and to also look at your areas of vulnerabilities. What is your own plan of action? How can you be a better manager and supervisor of your program and your staff in a new year? It also helps to have an idea of when you, people above you, are assessing you and your ability. It's helpful to have a way that you can also look at it with them. So it's important that you engage in this process of self-reflection. And then when people above you are also doing it, actually buying into the process and seeing how you can change. Okay, so licensing does have a self-assessment that I think is really, really good. So it's called the Child Care Centers a guide. It's a PDF, so you can download this off of our licensing website. It's a great way to audit yourself and your program on your compliance, specifically with licensing standards. So we know licensing is mostly concerned with the health and safety of our programs. So this is going to look specifically at it in those areas. So if you're concerned about the quality of health and safety and supervision, there's been large changes, either high staff turnover or changes in management or just a change within your organization. You're new to a center as a director or anyone in management. You have lots of new staff, or you're expecting your analysts to come. You either heard that they're in the neighborhood, they're going to be coming by, or you just haven't seen them for a while, or you had to like report an incident like a broken bone or child abuse or something like that. Take a look at this PDF and start doing your own audit to make sure that when licensing comes, you're totally. I think that's a great assessment. At the very minimum, everybody should be aware of this self-audit because we need to keep our licensing in compliance. That's like a bare minimum. So in conclusion, we need to rate ourselves with a set of parameters or a scale. I've talked a lot about ECHRS, the environmental rating scale, but any kind of process of self-reflection, self-assessment is really important for our quality standards and to keep us headed towards the goals and visions that we have in our program. This is what allows us to maintain quality, and it's also what allows us to keep going towards that ever elusive moving field goal of quality programs for young children. All right, this is one of two. I'll see you in the next lecture. Thanks.